Welcome back, everyone, to Radiant Resilience. I'm so excited for this conversation today. I have a friend of mine, Lana Mankowski. She is an author, certified life coach, and infertility advocate dedicated to helping women thrive after infertility. She is the founder of the Other's Day Brunch and host of the So Now What podcast, creating spaces where childless women feel seen, understood, and empowered. After a 7-year journey through fertility treatments that ended without a child, Lana experienced the isolation, self-judgment, and grief of navigating a future she never planned for. When she couldn't find the support she needed, she built it herself. Now, through her coaching, advocacy efforts, and community outreach, she helps women rediscover their relevance, connection, and purpose beyond motherhood. With an advanced coaching certification in grief and post-traumatic growth, Lana helps women process the loss of the dream of motherhood and move forward with intention. Her coaching program, Thrive After Infertility, guides women in rebuilding relationships and creating meaningful milestones that bring fulfillment in the decades ahead. Her book, So Now What, a #1 release on Amazon, offers a transformative roadmap for embracing life beyond infertility, helping women reclaim joy, meaning, and a sense of belonging without the children longed for. A sought-after speaker and media contributor, Lana is known for her powerful message, "Your story isn't over, it's just the beginning." She lives in downtown Chicago with her husband and her fur baby, Coco. Hi, Lana. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. Wow, that was a hefty bio. I might need to shorten that baby up a little bit. It's
I
a lot to
mean,
cover off on.
I know, but it's fantastic everything that you've been doing and sharing your journey, and obviously this very much resonates with me, as everybody listening knows my story as well. I'm going to let you start with maybe sharing your infertility story, and we'll talk about childless not by choice.
Okay, thanks for giving me this opportunity to share my story because for a long time I did not talk about it. I was very ashamed of having a body that could not figure out how to create a baby. And I didn't tell many people about what I was going through. So I'll rewind. I was 35 when I decided to get married to Jack, who was my dentist that I fell in love with. That's a whole nother podcast episode about how you start to date someone that when you can't really talk all your but it's a really cute story. And I always like to tell people you never know where you're going to meet your partner.
Yeah.
So when we got married, I was 35 and things were just always like humming along in my life. I created a really great career for myself. I lived 35 years being single and super happy, great friends, lived in big cities. So I just thought, okay, this next step is going to be the baby carriage. That's usually what we think happens when you wait this long to get married. And unfortunately, that did not happen. So at age 37, I finally went and got a diagnosis of, if you want to call it a diagnosis, of unexplained infertility,
It's the worst
which,
diagnosis.
yes, because I'm like, wait, what do you mean I'm unexplained? And I thought there's got to be more.
Yeah.
But they told me that it is a diagnosis for something that they can't really find is preventing you from becoming pregnant.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, so what do we do from here? And then we talked about a treatment care plan. I live in a big city. I live in Chicago. So I was fortunate enough to have a lot of good fertility resources close to home. And I decided to start at a local university who had a really good reputation for the fertility program. And actually, a couple of my friends went through and were successful with their pregnancies through the help of this group. So I thought, okay, let's do this. And I had no doubt in my mind that it wasn't going to happen for me. I don't know if it wasn't talked about, but I just thought if they're going to take me as a patient, like it clearly means that there's going to be something that's going to result in the child.
And if there's no
And
reason, like blatant reason, like the
yeah,
unexplained, because we're unexplained too. And I don't know, every time we do the blood work, we do the ultrasounds, we do all the things, all the testing, everybody's like, yeah, everything looks fine, everything's great. I very much went into my first round too of this is just going to work. This is going to solve the problem because there's nothing wrong. It's just maybe it's a timing thing, maybe it's a who knows what it is, but
yeah,
it's,
same.
yeah.
And I was yeah, 37. So I'm sure that there were conversations about a diminished ovarian reserve. But I just, again, in my brain, I was like, no one would really move forward with treatment if it wasn't going to result in something. And maybe it's the blinders that we think we need to have on of positivity. I don't know if I could take myself back to those early years of trying. I felt like there was a lot more favorable information offered to me than realistic conversations of this might not happen. But again, there's so much of the story that I think we're told that you have to stay positive and you have to focus on the good stuff. And I feel like I did all that. But after several IUIs and one fresh transfer at this clinic, I did a couple rounds, but only ever had one embryo that was viable for a transfer. And at that time, they were still doing fresh transfers. They there wasn't as much with the frozen kind of banking embryos type of thing going on there. So I'll never forget, again, you don't know what you don't know. But we were having our transfer done, and the doctor who was doing the transfer, sorry, my dog is jumping off my lap.
No worries.
You're going to probably see her here in the background.
No worries.
So my doctor said, okay, he was like talking to me through the process. And he said, this is just a formality. We're going to take the catheter, like they transfer the catheter up the embryo up through a catheter to get it into the right spot in your uterus. And he said, we're just going to pass the catheter to the embryology lab. They just check it to make sure that there's nothing left behind. It's just a formality. This never happens. And sure enough, the embryo is still in the catheter.
Really?
And I was like, okay. And we're just hanging there. We're going to just continue on. And I guess in hindsight, like I didn't realize like that was probably really detrimental to the embryo, but I still went through that 2 week wait period and it didn't result in a positive pregnancy test or any changes in my levels. So that was my only experience with having a transfer done at that clinic. And I don't know, I think there wasn't like any talk about, are you okay? There was no one checking in to say, this must be really hard. You went through this. Do you want to do more? I decided personally that I didn't want to do more at that clinic, not necessarily because of that, but just because I had already gone through so many rounds of IUI and done a couple stim rounds to get to that point to have that one fresh transfer. And I just sat there by myself for a couple years, not knowing what to do next. And no one ever called to check in or offer resources. And then it was a friend of mine who had gone through fertility treatments here in Chicago at a different clinic and did not end up having a pregnancy. She decided to look into a clinic in Colorado and she went out to visit it. And she was like, really the encouragement that maybe I wasn't ready to stop trying. I just needed someone to check in on me. And maybe if my clinic had done that before, I wouldn't have sat for a few years, not sure what's next, but
They
it was
never
that
even,
girlfriend.
when they called you to tell you that your transfer wasn't successful, they didn't ask you if you wanted to do something else?
Not that I recall. I think it might have just been like, if you want to do another round, call us back.
Yeah.
But there was no like firm like treatment pathway or
Mm,
like someone that called me back to be like, hey, what did you decide? I just remember feeling like this is such a hard place to be in. I've worked so hard to get to this point and I've had zero, in air quotes, success. I just didn't have the gumption to really create my own next step. So I
yeah.
really felt like I needed just some sort of check in from someone or someone to hash it through after a couple weeks or maybe even a couple months after that experience.
Yeah. It's so traumatizing and it's so much to go through. And then to feel like you're just a number. Like
Mhm.
my most recent last transfer, the medical assistant called me to tell me it failed. Not even a nurse. And her immediate thing after that, she's, oh, I'm so sorry it didn't work. So, do you want to go into a next round? And I'm like, first off, I don't have any more embryos left. So, read my file and look at that. And second, I can't answer that question right now. I am so distraught over all of that, and I never heard from them again either. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
So, yeah, it was like, thank God for my friend who knew what it felt like to be sitting there. And she encouraged me to go look at this clinic in Colorado, which meant that if I did go with this clinic, I would then, on my own dime, have to pay for travel out there, stay in a hotel during. I'd do my early monitoring here in Chicago just to see if my follicles were growing enough to then fly out to Colorado. And then I would stay in Colorado for anywhere from 8 to 10 days to get to the point in my cycle where they would do a retrieval. And then I'd have to always, you couldn't travel for 24 hours after a retrieval. So it was my friend picking up the phone and encouraging me to do it that encouraged me to then look at this clinic, and everything was out of pocket. So I knew going into it, it was going to be a big financial investment. And it was also a private clinic and not a university based clinic, which I don't know. I felt like the vibe was like very different. It felt very zen. And I just felt like much more relaxed doing IVF outside of the normalcy of my day job and that rush of getting all my lab work and all that stuff done in the morning and then showing up to work
Yeah.
and acting like I was present in my workplace, where
Yeah.
most people didn't know I was going through fertility treatments because I didn't want people to know that I needed help getting pregnant.
Yeah.
So I felt like going out to Colorado was really a nice escape from the chaos. And so I bought, at the time, they had this family building package. I want to say it was like $45,000 for 3 rounds. And we thought we're probably going to need that. And they'd give you your money back if you didn't end up needing all of the rounds. So we thought, okay, let's do this. And so we went through in our first round, and I had one embryo from that round, which I froze and then decided, because at this time I was already in my 40s. So they were like, you might just want to do a couple back to back rounds and see if you can accumulate some embryos, and then we'll do the transfer later. And that seemed like a good plan to me. So at the end of those rounds, one of which got canceled, I just had that one frozen embryo from that first go round, and I decided to get it genetically tested, because I was at this point 43, and I was like, to go through this. And I think there was some leftover trauma from that transfer
Ah.
from my first time, and there was just something that was like, I wanted to know if this was going to be something that I wanted to move forward with a transfer. And turned out it had trisomy 16, which means it had 3 of the 16th chromosome. And the doctor called and left me a voicemail with the news of that genetic testing and told me that it would never result in a viable pregnancy. So that was delivered to me over voicemail. In all clarity, he did say, I'm going to leave you some information. If you want to listen to it now, listen. If not, hang up and listen later. But it was like hard to get that information over a voicemail. It
Yeah.
was like, this was like the thing I was banking on. And that's where my journey to biological parenthood ended. And we had one more follow-up call with the doctor just to talk about other steps. And he did say, if you want to do more rounds, we'd be willing to do that for you, but we wouldn't expect there to be much difference in the result. So that kind of, I feel like I needed to hear that from
Yeah.
him in order to make the decision for myself that I did not want to pursue more rounds of IVF. But he did say in that same conversation, if you're interested in adoption or an egg donor, we have resources for that. Think about it, let us know. And we looked into adoption. We knew a donor egg didn't feel like the right option for us, but we not really pursued, I would say we looked into some options of adoption, both here in the States and then doing an international adoption. But when push came to shove, there was a couple things, but probably the thing that was most prominent was putting myself in a position to be disappointed and heartbroken again. And that was when we decided that we were going to remain childless. And again, never heard back from the clinic because we had no reason to call them back, and they didn't proactively call us back. So that was in 2018. And here we are in 2025.
Oh man, what a journey and so much heartbreak. Was there something specific about I'm just curious because people throw out the adoption option all the time to me still. And so was there something specific for those listening who don't know much about that process? Obviously, you said the potential for heartbreak again because the reality of adoption is it's not a guarantee either. Yeah, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I didn't talk about choosing not to adopt publicly for a long time because I felt like it opened me up to a lot of judgment from
Yeah.
society. So I'm really glad that you asked me to talk more about it because I think that there is this assumption that when you can't be a biological mother or you aren't a biological mother, that's just a natural thing that good people do. There's these
Yeah.
children who need homes and you want a child, and it should just be a given that is your next path. But there's so much about adoption, so many barriers to it, starting with the financial barriers to it. It is in many ways a business that people put a dollar sign on a child. And there's part of that is really heartbreaking to me because these little beings don't really have an advocate besides somebody who is trying to make that match for them. And it's not an easy path for children who are adopted, and there's a lot of trauma for them. So, all this, I don't necessarily want to go down that path, but
Yeah.
I've done a lot of research and followed a lot of people who have been adopted to see that it's not as always as ethical as we see, although I'm sure that there are ethical means to it. So I'm not
Sure.
discounting that there are. But for me, I think it's important for people to know that financially it's not accessible to everyone. There is not a lot of understanding of the point in which the health of the child is disclosed, what the knowledge of the parents, like, is there any type of disclosure on what type of conditions the baby was in utero?
Oh,
Was there drug use? Was there history of mental conditions? Just there's just so much we don't know. And it's okay if someone is listening and they're thinking about adoption and it doesn't feel right. If those things that I said are things that scare you off,
yeah.
you're not a bad person. Because I think a lot of judgment is given to people to just say that you should just want a child and you shouldn't ask any questions. And I think it's really important to know that adopting is not a resolve for the grief that we're feeling of
Mhm.
having a body that couldn't create a child or a living child. That was part of the pathway in my decision process. But then there was people I knew who were adopted who were like these. I worked with someone who was a very well-known physician. I worked in the medical field for 20 years. And I think, what if my kid ended up like
Yeah.
Dr. And then I knew people who had adopted who had kids that ran away from home and hated them and they didn't have a relationship with them anymore. So there was just such this broad spectrum. And I just invite people to sit with yourself and listen to what feels right for you. And if there's a little voice chirping in the back of your head, don't silence it, listen to it, and know that you know what is right for you, even if it's a
Mhm.
hard decision to make. So I wanted to want to adopt, but it just, in my heart of hearts, I knew it wasn't the right decision for me.
And I think it's important too to acknowledge that, like, in this journey, at some point, you have to choose your own mental health and sanity over putting yourself through the heartbreak over and over and over. Like, you can only handle so much as a human. And it's frustrating to me that nowadays it seems like choosing your own mental health over doing anything and everything in your power to make this happen because otherwise people make you feel like you didn't do enough or you're not doing enough or you didn't want it enough. And it's a very brave thing to walk away from it all. And like you said, listen to yourself and choose your own mental health. I had to do that. There was I can't even imagine going through all of that again. As much as I try to think about the other options and going down that path, I'm like, I don't know. I pause because of what I went through so much, and I just don't want to keep going through it. It's exhausting.
Yeah. And I think we don't hear the narrative enough that you can choose your path to motherhood to be like your path, that you
Yeah.
can say no to things, but also that you can still create a life you love without
Mhm.
children. And I think if more people heard that as a narrative, that you can go from heartbreak to happiness, then you'd see that it's not about the child completing you. It's about the relationship you create with yourself that completes you.
Can you talk about your journey through that after? So you've closed the book on that chapter. Was it scary? What type of feelings were you feeling right after that? And how did you work through it?
I would say I really disconnected myself from my life in the way that I didn't really know who I was. I didn't feel like I fit in with my friends that all were having kids and were growing their families. And in my workplace, I ended up sharing with some people just because when I went to Colorado, I had to take time off work. So I ended up having to tell people that I was really going through fertility treatments. And I felt like at work, I wanted to show up like I was just so unaffected by this, that I wasn't a mom, but I had this fabulous life and I would be the best dressed and taking the trips with my husband. I just felt like I would show up so inauthentically to try to prove to a point that I was not affected by my inability to have a baby. So I showed up a lot as like an actor in my life, and it was very exhausting. I remember even going to like social events with my mom friends and acting like I was okay when they would go around the table and talk about similar mom experiences, and I would just come home exhausted
Yeah.
and just feel like I made it through another day of acting like I'm okay, but I just knew I wasn't. And it was when the pandemic hit. So 2018 is when I got my genetic testing results back. 2020 came along and I worked in a field in medicine. I worked in an operating room. So I was always out of the house, like around people, working with
Yeah.
people. And when the pandemic closed down a lot of the operating rooms to only leave them open for necessary types of procedures and COVID patients, I was sitting at home with myself and being like, I have no clue who I am. Like, I felt
Mm.
like I had turned into this angry bird, that I was cynical. I was loved my husband. Like he was my rock through this whole thing, but would often question, like, are we going to be enough? Do we have enough
Yes.
substance to keep us connected for the next, say, 40, 50 years without kids?
That's
And
let me talk about that for just a minute because
yeah,
I think that's an interesting because I mean, I met my husband very early in life and we've had a long relationship together. But that was one of the main things I went through in my grieving process was like, am I going to be enough for him? Is he going to be enough for me? Because we always had this picture that we would have kids. And now I'm like, why would that change anything one way or the other? Like, we had a good relationship before, we have a good relationship now, but it's like a scary thing when you think you're going to bring children into it and why we think children are going to make it better. And not that the opposite is true, but I don't know. Talk about that a little bit more.
yeah, I think we often see like the kids as like a connection point for our marriage.
Yeah.
And the having this project that you're working on together of raising kids is like your way to connect with one another, where when you don't have children, there is a different level of connection or type of connection or pathway to connection that you're then encouraged to take. And it can be like, oh wait, like we've got to connect with each other as humans and not in like our ways we parent, or who's the
Yeah.
disciplinarian and who lets the kids do this and who's the cool parent, like all that stuff. And I carried a lot of guilt that I would even question
Yeah.
whether our marriage could be enough with the two of us, like whether we had enough substance. So I think this is one of the things that one of the pillars in my coaching program, Thrive After Infertility, that a lot of people come to me to work on is like, how do I build a relationship in my marriage with my partner or in my marriage that makes me feel like we are a unit and we're not just two people that come home and are roommates when we come home from work, or we just happen to share the same bed. And there's a lot of intimacy, like for me and a lot of people, my clients that I work with, like feeling intimate and wanting to have a connective relationship after all the trauma
Mhm.
of thinking of sex as like the pathway to have the baby or timed intercourse or tracking your ovulation and feeling like sexual intimacy was just something that you had to put on the calendar, and then feeling like you could explore and enjoy with your partner again. Like I flew out to California, my husband and I, a couple years ago to work with somebody who was a relationship like intimacy coach
Mhm.
because there was so much pent up anxiety that I had about even getting intimate with my husband,
Yeah.
because it just brought back so many memories of hoping that we were having sex at the right time, and maybe this might be the right cycle. And there's a lot of trauma that we carry in our pelvis, which I learned from her. And through these exercises she worked with me, is just anytime like belly button and below there was ever any touch or closeness, like my body went into
Mhm.
this total anxiety and just like fear. And a lot of that is held over from all of the trauma that we've been through in our pelvis
Yeah.
throughout our pathway, either through infertility or fertility treatments and things like that. So just
Yeah.
so much that we think we should just be able to get over,
Mm.
and no one talks about it. So then we judge ourselves as, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me that this person has been
Mhm.
by my side? And so
Yeah.
really things I work with my clients is like how to decide, like, why did you marry that person? And yeah, it might have been like, oh, he would be such a cute dad, or my partner has the cutest eyes. I hope the kids get their
Mhm.
eyes or whatever. And just realizing like beyond that, like, why did you marry that person? Or why did you enter into a relationship with that person if you're not married? What about that person? You got to take yourself back to the qualities that brought you together, but then also the qualities that they displayed during your journey. And
Yeah.
then there are some of my clients who've decided to part ways. Like they've seen a side of their partner and they said, like, they weren't the person that I
Yeah.
thought. And it's heartbreaking too. So I don't think that we always have to have this expectation that your marriage has to last forever, that sometimes in hard moments, parts of people that you don't know or didn't see. And it's okay to say that this isn't the right person for me, also. So I
Yeah.
don't want to paint the picture that everyone's got to have the beautiful marriage after all
Yeah.
this ends as well.
Yeah. It's so traumatizing that I feel like it does a lot of the times affect marriages negatively, unfortunately, which is tough. I feel very lucky that mine has stayed intact through all
Yeah,
of this for sure.
same. And we're very different. I asks me all the time, like, how do you talk about infertility all the time? He does not want to address it. I've
Oh,
have a podcast. I've been like, babe, do you think you'd ever like want to talk on the podcast? Oh my God, no, that's
mm,
behind us. We don't need to talk about it. And I have to respect that as his
yeah.
partner. Like, we're in different places, and the way I show up, I can't expect has to be the way that he shows up. But I think there's a lot of male partners that don't have an outlet to talk to people
Yeah.
and navigate what they're feeling. Because for so long, I didn't really realize that he was grieving. I
Yeah.
thought, I'm the one with the diagnosis. His sperm counts were great and everything was good. It was me. And so I thought I was the only one grieving. But come to find out, Father's Day is really hard for him sometimes too.
Yeah. So you said you isolated
Yeah.
after all of that.
I isolated, I quit working out. Like I
Mhm.
had gained a lot of weight during my fertility treatments and was just like, hated my body. I was really angry with my body. So I quit taking care of my body. I went on what I call a supplement strike,
I'm
because,
still on that one. I have a hard
yeah,
time. Even I know I should probably be taking at least a multivitamin every day. And I'm just like, I still struggle. I'm like, it's been almost 2 years, 3 years. And I'm like, I just cannot. I don't want to take things every single day. And like, I'm still on that strike.
yes. And I just quit working out. And then I had this guilt of, oh my gosh, like you don't have the excuse of not having a great body because of not giving birth to a child, which I don't mean that in any way offensive to people who are moms, but that's what our brain tells us, that if we don't have a pregnancy to attribute weight gain to, or saggy boobs, or all the things from breastfeeding, we think that we have to like have this great body, or because there is no reason for us not to because we never birthed a child. So there was part of that was going through my brain.
Mm.
But it didn't motivate me enough to want to do anything. So it was a woman, I was listening to her podcast. She has nothing to do with infertility, but she lost 100 pounds naturally. And her podcast is called Losing 100 Pounds with Corinne. And she turns out was a life coach. And I didn't know anything about life coaching. I didn't know the effects of it, but working with her and understanding the way that I told my story and viewed myself because of the circumstances that happened in my life. It was up to me to decide how I wanted to react to them. No one ever told me I had the permission to see
Mm.
myself differently than a really sad person and
Hmm.
somebody who had bad luck. I carried these narratives. And so, working with her through her life coaching program on weight loss, I thought to myself, more women need to know that this is possible when you leave fertility treatments without a
Yeah.
baby and there's no resources. So it was 2020 when I signed up. It was a year-long coaching program. And in 2021, I finished that and I started my podcast in September of 21 and started just talking about the realities of what it's like to leave your desire of becoming a mom. And most of my listeners have gone through IVF and not left with or taken a baby home. And that's where my transition started because I was sick of looking in the mirror and not knowing who I was and feeling like I missed the old pre infertility version of me, but the
Yes.
expectation that I could be that person again felt so far off. I just felt like there was this mold of what happens, like what I had to be like because I wanted to be a mom and I could. And a lot of that was like, I had to be like jealous of my friends with kids. I couldn't go to baby showers. Like I would be angry if somebody asked me how many kids I had. So I had these preconceived expectations of who I needed to show up as. And it didn't feel right to me because that wasn't the person I was. Like I was always like a real fun, loved to go out, like social,
Yeah.
connective person. And I just wanted to figure out how to find her again.
Mm.
So that's really what motivated me to start doing the work that I do.
All right. So did you go through that portion of finding out like who you were again post infertility while you were going through all this coaching stuff? Was that kind
Yes.
of what brought it
So
all out for you?
a lot of it were like the fundamentals of the weight loss coaching. I just transitioned them into scenarios related to what I was feeling through my infertility. And then when I got my certification, actually had the foundation to then understand how to help other people through it. So understanding like what are the thoughts we're thinking about ourselves
Mm.
when somebody says, have you thought about adoption? Are you
Mm.
thinking, oh, they probably didn't think I want to be a mom bad enough? Or are you thinking to yourself, yeah, I thought about that and it didn't feel right to me?
Yeah.
So understanding what is the narrative, what is the way we're showing up in the world when we can't control what people say to us
Mm.
and ask us and recommend we do pray harder or hang in there or all the things that people think that they can offer us to
Yeah.
change the outcome of where we are without children, but we can really decide what do we want to think about ourselves, even if nobody else thinks the same way we do. Can we choose to believe differently about how we are going to show up in our lives?
Yeah.
And nobody ever told me I had the permission to
Mm.
think differently than
Sure.
the way that I just thought you have to think when you're childless after infertility.
Yeah, our whole society is built around, you have kids, that's what you do, right? You like go to high school, you graduate, you go to college, you graduate, you get married, you have kids, you buy a house, like all the things, right? And I don't know, like there are very few people in my life that have modeled. I've had a few friends that chose not to have kids, and that's a different path. But there's just most of the people in my world have had kids. And so it's a scary thing, I think, to think about what that looks like because we don't know in some cases. I think now it's being talked about a lot more, thank goodness. But yeah, it's because it's not modeled and the society is just, oh, you have kids, that's what you're supposed to do. I always had in my head at some point I would be raising a child for 18 years and that would be my purpose and that would be my goal and that would be all the things. And then when it's not that and you didn't get a say in that either, it's, oh, okay, now what? And I think it's so scary for a lot of
So
people.
now what? Which is the foundation of everything I do because it's so common if, someone's listening who doesn't have kids, whether by choice or not by choice, people are like, "Oh my gosh, like you're so lucky. You don't have to wake up and
Mm,
drive so and so to practice or go on hockey weekends and stay at a Hampton Inn in the middle of nowhere with the hockey moms." And what people don't realize is that it's very overwhelming to create those milestones in your life when you thought that they were just going to be handed them
yeah.
by motherhood. Like, hey, like you said, your kids they're 18, that you're going to go look at colleges, you're going
Yeah.
to send them up. There's going to be all these milestones that your life is modeled behind. And it seems this life without kids feels very overwhelming to be the person who decides, how do I fill every moment of my day and feel proud of the
Yeah.
things that I'm doing? And I used to feel that way when I would go to work and everyone was talking about their weekends and they'd be like, "What'd you do?" And I felt like anything I said didn't sound as impressive or as meaningful as the person who was going
Mm,
and staying in the middle of Minnesota at a Fairfield Inn with their kids on hockey weekends.
yeah.
And so a lot of the a lot of women struggle with finding meaning and purpose in
Yeah.
their lives because they don't have children. But what I really focus on again in my coaching program is helping you figure out, like, how do you fill your time? Like, how
Yeah.
do you find the things that make you feel like you are growing as a person, that you are meaningful, that you have purpose,
Mhm.
because those aren't things that we're taught. We're always
Yeah.
taught to go to somebody else to do those things. And so having a child doesn't create your purpose. It's part of who you are, but there can't be something outside of you that creates your purpose.
Yeah.
You showing up in your life and doing the things that fuel you and excite you and change the world are the things that give you
Mm.
purpose.
And a lot of women go through that when they're empty nesters now too, right? So they have poured their heart and soul into raising a child for 18 years or longer or whatever. And then when the kids move out, oh, there's a lot of women out there that have that identity crisis at that point in time, right? A lot of my friends that are very healthy mamas, they have a lot of their own interests too, which is so it's important even as a mom to try to find out who
Yeah.
you are and your purpose outside of that.
Yeah. And I think about the women that have been so impactful in my life that are moms. It's like their impact and the purpose that they've created in my life aren't anything related to them being a mom. It's like a different attribute
Yes.
that they have and a different talent. And I think that there's a lot of women out there who often feel pigeonholed, thinking that they have to say that their biggest accomplishment is having their
Yes.
child. And there's so many other beautiful things that they bring into the world. So
Yeah.
there's just this comparison game, I think,
Mhm.
that we always do, where we look at somebody whose life is different than ours. And instead of saying, "Oh, I wonder how I can create more of this or that, or the things that bring me closer to what I desire," and instead be like, "Oh, I can never have that because I don't have this one thing that
Mhm.
somebody else has," whether it's the car or the
Yeah.
house or the husband or the marriage, or like, let's just say, "Here's what I got and here's what I want."
Yeah.
And there's always a way to create what you want in your life. And it doesn't always have to be with a tangible something. It could just be an idea, a vision, a way that you see yourself, and maybe reframing the story that you're telling yourself about who you are and what you're adding to the society.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me about your book. How did that come along? I've been reading it. I'm partway through it. I was just telling Lana before we hit record that I have been working my way through it, but I started three books at one time. So
Yes.
I love the format of it and everything, but tell me how that came about for you.
When I never got a call back from either clinic, I I always, like, I see myself like I just was always a go-getter, like a creator, somebody who wasn't afraid to be a leader. And when I left that clinic and I could not find one thing that was a resource to me, I thought, God, if I'm this resourceful, I can't imagine that I did not leave a stone unturned. But then there was part of me that was like, has no one really ever addressed how to navigate life with the children that you thought you were going to have? And turns out there's really very few resources, if any, out there that I could find. And so I started my podcast, like I told you, in 2021. But in the back of my head, I was like, I wish that there was like a book that doctors or clinics could refer people to, something that addresses things like how to say no to a baby shower or how to go to a baby shower and feel like you are supported by yourself, how to navigate holidays like Mother's Day, Christmas holidays, when you have these traditions that you grew up with and you don't see yourself as having someone to pass them down to. Things like, for us, we bought our house that we thought we were going to bring our babies home to while we were in the midst of fertility treatments, and how to let go of that house. Like for me,
Mm,
I every time I walked by certain rooms, I just in my brain thought those are going to be the nurseries, and there was a lot of pain of remembering phone calls and canceled cycles and things in that house. And so deciding, yes, it was my dream home, but I could also leave it and find something else. So really, I wanted to write this book that wasn't like a story about my infertility journey. Like
yeah.
I'll talk about things that I experienced, but it's not a book about me, but it's like the real things that we go through and how to really navigate life when you didn't have the children you always dreamed of.
Yeah.
So I wrote the book and it came out in April of 2025, so not too long ago.
Yeah.
And it hit number one new book in on Amazon. It was like number one in the fertility and infertility categories because I think there are just so few opportunities for women to find resources that aren't like hang in there, keep trying, like the toxic positivity
Oh, yeah,
type
Lord.
stuff, which I think is maybe useful for some people, but it just wasn't useful for me because when you have that toxic positivity and you feel like you're falling short all the time, like it's just another opportunity to judge yourself that you're not doing the thing that's getting you to where you want to go. And I just say, let's meet ourselves where we are.
Yeah.
And that's what this book is really about. And I've been doing a lot of work. I mentioned to you that I worked for 20 years in the medical field. So I am working directly with fertility doctors and fertility clinics, getting them to recognize that their patients want more.
Mm,
And while it's very hard for them as the doctor, I'm finding to have those conversations with us because they're grieving also. It's
mm,
they want us to have had our outcome.
yeah.
And when we don't, they oftentimes are in their offices crying after giving us the sad news and the hard news, feel like they can continue to support patients when the next step isn't a child or it isn't an egg donor or adoption, that they can confidently have resources that they can tell people if you decide to move forward without kids, we have resources for you too.
Yeah.
So that's really why I do all the work that I do and the
Mhm.
advocacy work, and why I started my brunch called the Others Day Brunch, which happens the day before Mother's Day here in
Mm,
Chicago, because there's so many women who don't have children who find it really hard, even if you have a mom in your life or someone who's a mom that you want to celebrate. It's hard to feel or have that reminder every year that you're never going to be the mom who's
mhm.
celebrated. So women fly out from all over the country to come to Chicago the day before Mother's Day. And I'm really just doing my best to create the connections that I needed and that
Mhm.
I wanted. So for me, that's what fuels me to get out of bed every day because
Mhm.
I thought if I couldn't find them, they didn't exist.
Yeah.
And I guess I got to create them. So that's what
Well,
I'm doing.
unfortunately, we're the story that nobody wants to hear, too. Really, like nobody going through their infertility journey wants to hear the story that doesn't end with a baby. Like we,
Yeah.
and
I would
so,
so many times like I'd meet someone and they said, "Oh, I'm going through IVF," and they didn't know my story and I just would stay silent because I was like, "Oh, I don't want to burst their bubble. I don't want them to lose
yeah,
hope that I'm the worst case scenario that they might end up like me."
yeah,
But what a disservice that they don't really know that side of the story.
yeah.
And the more I tell my story and you tell your story, and anyone who's listening who has left their journey without the baby they dreamed of, if we can be the examples to those 7-year-old girls who don't yet know that they're going to end up without a baby, that are playing with dolls and thinking that's going to be their future, if they remember this one person that they heard speak or that they interacted with that left such a beautiful impression, even though they weren't a mom. Like we
Mm,
need more women telling their stories so the universe can see that it's possible.
yeah, for sure. And showing the example that you can be happy and have a beautiful life after that. Tell me about your coaching program before we wrap everything up. I know a little bit about your coaching program,
Yeah.
but for anybody who's listening who may want to work with you, what does that look like? And yeah.
Yeah. I started Thrive After Infertility in 2021 when I finished my life coaching certification. I've since gone on, you mentioned it in my bio, to get an advanced certification in grief and post traumatic growth because a lot of us are grieving something that we never physically had.
Yeah.
And I realized that through my coaching work and the clients that I was working with, they were not allowing themselves to acknowledge that losing a dream is just as significant to us as losing a human person. And this thing that felt so real to us of being a mom and this life that we mapped out for us, even though it was only in our brain, to have that taken from you, you're grieving something that feels so real. And so in my practice, I have a 12-week coaching program called Thrive After Infertility, which focuses on how to repair that relationship with your body. So we talked about going on your supplement strikes, feeling like your body failed you, how to look, having that extra weight on, and how can you look in the mirror and love yourself again, even despite all the things that didn't happen the way that you thought. The other important part of the practice that I work on is relationships. So we talked about your friends with kids, we talked about marriages, but what about in your workplace when people always expect that you're going to stay late because they've got to leave early to go get Joey to the orthodontist, or you feel like it is your responsibility to cover someone's maternity leave because that's what good colleagues do when you don't have kids. You think everyone expects you to show up in a certain way, but then you get really burnt out in
Mhm.
your workplace and you probably carry a lot of silent anger that people don't see that you deserve to leave sometimes to go to a yoga class or to go on vacation with your husband or your partner or your girlfriends. And then the third part we talked about a little bit was like owning your time. So, how are you going to fill your future in a way that you're not thinking about the day that you die old alone in a nursing home? Because
Mhm.
that's the narrative we oftentimes go to. So, how can we figure out how to create a life that we are loving what we do, that we find meaning and purpose?
Mhm.
So, it's a 12-week program. Some people do a small group setting where they meet other women who are on the journey or have been on the journey that they've been on. Some people like to do one-on-one coaching. I'm here for whatever someone wants to do because I think we all need different things for different
Yeah.
reasons. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's Thrive After Infertility.
Amazing. I love all the work you're doing in this world for this. We need it for sure. If somebody does want to work with you, I'm going to put links in the show notes, but what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, my website, Lana Mankowski. I have a love hate with social media, but Instagram is my drug of choice for social media.
Yeah.
So my handle's Lana.Manikowski. And then I'd also love to offer, I don't know if you ever downloaded this, but I created a resource guide called the top 27 things people say when you're childless
Oh no, I don't
and
think
how
I
to
downloaded that.
respond. Yeah. And I put that, it's on my website. You can download it for free. And it is just a guide to use when people do say those things like you can always adopt or God has his ways. So, some of the common things people say with some potential ways that you can respond to them and feel like you are showing up confident in the way that you're representing yourself and talking about your story. So, I invite anyone listening, if you want to download it, it's on my homepage of lanamanikowski.com, my website.
I think that's so, I don't know. It's so, that's one of the hardest things is to deal with people's reactions and people's comments. And I realize that people always just mean when they want to help and they want to fix it for you. But man, it gets exhausting. And
Yeah.
there was a time period where I wanted to be just say no, I didn't want kids when people asked me. Because the first question is always, do you have kids? And then it's, did you want them? Why people feel like that's any of their business, I don't know. But
Yeah. I know the world often portrays us as people needing fixing, but
Mm,
what I love about the work that I do is I help people realize you're beautiful and whole the way that you are. Like you don't need to be fixed.
Yeah. And people don't want to see us sad and struggling and all the things. So people that love us, but it is a tough one. One of the ones that I've gotten a lot because I travel is, oh, that's why you can travel so much because you don't have kids. And I'm like, if you only knew. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also traveled a lot before I started trying for kids.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah.
know people project a lot of their own inferences of what it's like to not have kids and a sense again of yearning that they wish that they had the ability to do
Mm.
things. So it's all a
Yeah.
lot to go into in this
Yeah. Of
episode, but a lot
course.
of what I do in my coaching practice is just how you can get really comfortable knowing who you are and feel like you have relevance
Mm.
and meaning, even if you're misunderstood by other people around
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. It's amazing. I love the work that you're doing. Keep doing it. Thank you
Thanks.
so much. Do you have any parting words for my listeners that are maybe struggling in the early stages of infertility or childlessness after infertility?
Yeah. I think it's really important to know that even if life does not turn out the way that you thought it was going to be, you still have a beautiful life to live. And I don't think we hear that enough. And people who get divorces who were never expecting to get divorced, people who lose a partner, people who have severed relationships with friends. And I'm not just talking about infertile people, I'm talking
Yeah.
about in general. There are so many people who have experiences that have happened to them that they never planned for, that they just never could have anticipated. And there's so many people that give up on themselves and they
Mm.
give up on life. These aren't the storybook ending.
Yeah.
And I just want people to know that you can create a life you love, even if it turned out so differently than you thought.
I love that. All right, my dear. That was good. That was great parting words. Thank you.
Thanks for
But
having me.
yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story and doing all the work you're doing. It's amazing. And I'm so glad we were able to connect. But yeah, thank you so much for being here.
All right. I look forward to more opportunities to talk about this because we don't
Yeah.
hear it enough.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.